Hello and welcome everybody to our MICROPOL webinar. My name is Christophe Gobes. I'm the Practice Lead Data Governance at MICROPOL. And with me here today is Philippe Meijer, our Practice Lead Data Advisory. We are proud to present to you our new GDPR offering, which is called the GDPR Starter Pack, which we will be explaining during the next 30 minutes. So what do we have on the agenda for today? First of all, I will give a very brief introduction on GDPR. Don't worry, it's only one slide. And afterwards, we will move on to the content of the main content of the webinar, which is the GDPR Starter Pack and what exactly is in there and what's not. We will also quickly introduce MICROPOL for the people who don't know us, who are online with us today. And afterwards, we will go to our Q&A session. So what is GDPR? Basically, this entire slide gives you a high-level overview of all the different aspects that are in the GDPR. Starting at the top, we have, first of all, the relation between the data controller and the data processor. You, as an organization, are the data controller, and you may choose to give certain processing activities to a data processor, a third party. For example, when you have your CRM in the cloud using Salesforce. In the bubble, we have the main aspects covering the GDPR. The first principle is the accountability principle, which is quite important in the GDPR. First of all, the Data Protection Officer, which is a new role that is defined in the GDPR, which is a specific function to ensure that the organization is GDPR compliant. We also have the Privacy by Design and by Default principle, which means that any project that you undertake needs to adhere to specific rules regarding data protection and data privacy. The data privacy impact assessments are assessments that you need to do upfront when you do a new project to ensure that you are compliant. And obviously, you always need to keep a record of compliance. So you need to be able to prove to the data protection authorities that you are doing what is necessary to protect the data of your customers or your employees. On the individual rights are quite known as well. Which basically means that any person or any customer for which you hold data has the right to be informed about his data, can have access to the data, can rectify the data, or can even ask you to delete that information, that personal data that you keep on that specific customer. On the bottom, we see the lawful processing, which means that for any processing activity that you do using personal data, you need to have either consent, contractual obligation, legal obligation, vital interest, public interest, or legitimate interest, depending on the specifications of that processing activities. On the right side, we have the data breach notification, which is mandatory. So say that you have a data breach in specific cases, you need to inform the Data Protection Authority within 72 hours that you have been breached. And obviously there are also penalties involved in the GDPR, which are quite known as well. Basically 4% of your worldwide revenue or 20 million euros, whichever is higher. And this is all obviously related to personal data, so any data you hold that can identify a person, a EU citizen, in your information architecture. So we give the word to Philippe now.
Well, thank you, Christophe, for this concise introduction of what GDPR is. And good morning, everybody. What happens if we go around our customer base, and as we are in the field talking to customers, we would like to share a couple of perceptions that we have with you. Despite the approaching deadline of May 25th, we still see many customers that still did not start any work around the GDPR. So this is likely to become a massive problem when there is going to be a bottleneck, when people are going to realize that deadline is approaching and work hasn't started yet. So there's still some work to be done. On the other hand, we see quite a big deal of confusion about the range of application. In what I mean is GDPR is a European legislation, a directive, but in how far am I concerned if I'm a local business in a B2B world? The range of applications is quite confusing, where people still wondering, am I impacted? Is it for me? Do I need to do something? And if so, what exactly do I need to do? And that leads to the other point that we often see is it's the starting point. There's so many actors around GDPR, and things has been around for quite some while. There is the legal side of the house, as you mentioned in the intro. There is the data processing side of the house. There is marketing questions, HR questions, processing and financial questions. So the blocking point or the pain point is often where exactly do we start, and from where do we take it? And last but not least, once you have figured out whether and where to start, then you might want to run into the problem that qualified resources are a real scarcity. That can be both internal resources of really the person driving the GDPR program within your company, but also external resources like experts, because the field of application is so wide and there's such a big number of companies, impacted, and there is all the common denominator, which is the 25th of May, that people are really rushing into qualified resources that might become a problem. So in order to face and absorb all those challenges, we have been taking some distance and, okay, what can we do as MICROPOL to take a stand and help those customers and come with a very pragmatic, hands-on, and actionable solution to tackle the issues of GDPR. This is why we designed something which we call the GDPR Starter Pack. It's not a turnkey solution. It's not a miracle out of the box. It gets you started, like the word says. And in the next slide, what I propose is to decompose and explain you in a minute what it entails, what it has. Well, first of all, the first component is it's an awareness session. It's not about evangelization about GDPR it's more about leveling the understanding about GDPR and the impact it's going to have across your company, and zooming into individual departments that are impacted by the GDPR, taking into consideration your individual business and the business you're into. So awareness session, leveling and getting the understanding right is something we kick it off with. Afterwards, the word spin out DPO, which is the Data Protection Officer. All our consultants in the field are certified experts as DPO. So those people pull together all the kind of knowledge base and design a questionnaire, which is pretty much aligned to the legislation. So taking the legislation as a starting point, we have designed a questionnaire that our experts will walk you through to understand what are the pain points, what needs to be done. Once we filled that questionnaire, the next station would be that we deliver you a high-level roadmap. So you need to understand, where am I today, where do I need to be tomorrow, and how do I get from A to B. So that roadmap comes and gives you basically, the things you need to do with actionable and relevant milestones you need to cross of getting from A to B. And last but not least, name it tooling if you want. The GDPR comes also with a unification effect, which means that specific tool sets or templates for disclosure, reporting, or data collection got to be used in order to compare apples and pears and cater for a certain level of transparency. So what we offer you together with our experts are those exact templates. So basically the whole tool set that you need to get started. What I suggest is that we have a deep dive into each of those blocks to give you a better understanding of what it is exactly we would bring to the table. Christoph.
Yeah, thanks, Philip, for that overview. So starting with the awareness session, this awareness session takes place during half a day at your offices, and during this half a day we will cover specific topics, namely general GDPR introductions, telling you what exactly is the GDPR and also what it is not, obviously. What is the impact of GDPR on your personal business, divided by roles and responsibilities. We will also discuss the rights of individuals, what the practical implications are for your organization, and we will also come up with minimum compliance requirements. So what is the minimum you actually need to do in order to maybe, let's say, survive an audit, should you get one from the data protection authorities, and what you need to have in place when you have a data breach on your systems. We will also use some concrete use cases. So we will adapt, given your context, adapt our use cases so they are actually making sense to you as an organization, and that you can also have already some first actionable insights on what to do when becoming GDPR compliant. When we go to the second stage, as Philippe already explained in the overview, we have developed a GDPR questionnaire, which was created by our certified DPO consultants. And what we do with that is assess the as-is situation and also assess your maturity towards GDPR compliance. So the questions cover how easily can you as an organization classify data? Where is it? What types of data are we using? Is it fitting the purpose of the processing activity? How long do we keep it? How long do we retain the data? Is all covered in one block. How the governance is handled of the data that is kept in your systems. Do you have an organization in place to handle that? How is the data secured? Do you keep your service on-premise or is it in the cloud? Do you also have, in terms of a data breach, do you have procedures in place? Do you have proper accountability already signed up front? Because once you have a data breach, obviously, you need to act quickly. Organizational structure. Do you have dedicated resources on managing your data assets already in place? Or is it really, let's say, in the early stages of organizing yourself? And also, which reporting is in place? As I said in the introduction, it is very important that you can show your compliance to the authorities in case you have problems. So reporting is an important aspect of the GDPR. So this is a screenshot of the questionnaire that we use for our customers. So once we have that questionnaire filled in, which is something where we accompany you in order to fill it like it should, because some questions might be a bit difficult for some people. So we explain exactly what is meant and how you should interpret the different questions. Once we have that questionnaire, we will also perform interviews with key stakeholders in order to come up with what we call a high-level roadmap. This high-level roadmap will address the following. First of all, the different steps required towards compliancy. There are various guidelines and roadmaps that are available online for free. We have taken the best of those roadmaps and created our own one, and we will adapt it specifically to your organization. We identify high-risk areas of the organization. Often you will hear the so-called risk-based approach when implementing GDPR. So we will identify which are the high-risk areas in your organization, what steps you can take in order to mitigate those risks, and present them in a nice overview for you. We will also describe different roles and responsibilities related to GDPR that you can implement in your organization, considering the employees you have and what knowledge level that they have, and which skill sets may be required to get externally. We also provide you with high-level planning, high-level timelines. So from our expertise, basically we can draft a planning with the milestones and how much time it would take given your organizational size. The templates we have, as I explained in the introduction, an important part of the GDPR is the accountability principle. So you need to be able to demonstrate to the authorities that you are compliant. In order to fulfill this requirement, it's important that you have specific documentations in place. These are well defined, and we will provide you with a list of templates to ensure that accountability. These templates are, first of all, the data register. So this is referring to the famous Article 30, where you need to register your processing activities, where you define which data is used, who has access to it, how long you retain the data, what types of personal data are involved, what is the legal ground for processing that data, which is something you all need to document and create what is the so-called data register. So we will provide you with a template for that, and also obviously with advice and guidance as to how to best fill that in. The privacy policy guidelines. So it is important that you inform the individuals on which you hold data, on what data you hold, how you process it, for what purpose, and what rights that they have under the new GDPR. So we will provide you with guidelines as to how to draft a good privacy policy. It needs to be clear, it needs to be direct, and it needs to be written in easy and understandable language. So no more 150 pages of privacy policy. It needs to be well defined, well written, and clear for your customers or employees. Data breach procedure and logging. So we will define together with you, in case of a data breach, what needs to be done. Like I said in the introduction, in some cases, not always, you need to inform the data protection authorities within 72 hours that you have been breached. So who will be taking action on that? Are the communications already ready? It's advised that you already have communications ready, not only to the authorities, but also maybe to the individuals that have their data being breached. And also a template for logging any data breach that you may have. For example, the loss of an unencrypted USB key with personal data on there also counts as a data breach. So all of this needs to be logged centrally so you can show to the authorities that you are keeping track of whatever might go wrong in the organization when we're talking about handling personal data. Protection by default and by design. We have a special checklist available that we provide to you, where we give some of the key aspects that you need to consider when you have a new project. So this means that you need to look at these requirements when you come up with a new project, and we advise to include this checklist in your project templates, so you are ensured that if you have personal data in those new projects, that you treat them according to the GDPR principles. So this checklist is also something that we will make available to our customers when they register for the GDPR Starter Pack. Last but not least, the DPIA, or the so-called Data Privacy and Protection Impact Assessment, which is something that for specific processing activities you need to create and document, basically indicating which personal data is being used and how it's being used, what the legal ground is, retention periods, etc. So we also have a template for that, which we will make available for you.
Okay, thank you, Christophe, for this overview. I think that there is a lot to do, and this is also, I think it justifies that we took some difference by packing an offering which is called a starter pack. As we said at the beginning, the purpose is twofold. One, to level your approach to GDPR, and really very concretely and practically to get you started and get you going, of moving you from A to B. We trust there's still a lot to do. There is varying levels of complexity, function of the company, function of the organization, function of the amount of data you hold, and the type of business you're in. So this is why we can perfectly customize the approach and help you, as I said, getting through the GDPR challenge. Look, the thing is, we are very flexible in terms of the advice, but also the solution or the tooling we would or could bring to the table. You know, as we said at the beginning, GDPR is such a wide range with so many actors around in their respective fields of expertise, where you have on the legal side of the house, you know, law firms or accounting firms. You have, you know, specialized IT solutions to tackle very special data processing or data protection or data quality needs. You have, you know, large implementation generalists who will be, you know, run and deliver large-scale GDPR compliance programs. And then you have something which is, a one-size-fits-all, if I may say, a polyvalent, service provider that comes with the knowledge, the expertise, the capacity, and the toolings to help you getting through the challenge. And this is exactly the arena in which we want to play by releasing our starter pack for small to medium-sized enterprises. The interesting thing is to manage the challenge, we are happy to release the GDPR pack at a fixed price. So that would basically put you abreast of any negative surprises that could arise from absorbing the challenge. It can be customized, and as I told you, function of your business and your need and the data you hold, we would basically bundle the solution, taking and sourcing from the template that we have. Anyway, if you want to go further with the GDPR or dive into more concrete advice, be it an in-depth fashion of what does it mean to me, please don't hesitate taking contact, reaching out, and we'd be happily and gladly in contact for you to provide more details and see how we could help you getting from A to B. Last but not least, give you a word about MICROPOLE as a company. It's still just there's so many actors around there, and I trust some people might be bruised with information about GDPR. So we consider ourselves as a niche player with a very strong focus and specialization around innovating and data and digital solutions. This is really our core business, where we have the comfort of being large enough, of being part of an international group, with over 1,000 consultants, while local enough with sufficient bandwidth and delivery capacity of more than 85 consultants in Belgium, and we have access to a knowledge base of coming from 5 countries across the group. But that being said, our core business is data, but data in a very applied range. So what we want to do is to really, as you might have understood through this approach of the starter pack, we want to partner with our client and really understand what are the organizational, functional, and technical challenges that transformation can be, whether it is a digital transformation or a regulatory transformation or just an organizational transformation, and basically, be solidary with you and partner with you and come to deliver a jointly defined, delivery strategy. Now, as that relates to data, it can decline in different ranges of applications. So GDPR is a fine example of a compelling event that puts companies in front of the challenge to tackle several issues, well, eventually related to data, but that could then cascade and translate into a wider perspective of looking at data. So in that perspective, we might want to look at data insights, classically ultimately known as BI. We would also, gladly help you with the data roadmap. Things like data analytics, big data analytics is something we feel extremely comfortable around. And data protection, as we just, spent half an hour explaining and going to the topics, be it, compelled by a regulatory driver like the GDPR, or in terms of improvement and the way you manage and handle your data altogether. And last but not least, from a wider perspective, everything related to data governance, how do you organize yourselves, how to manage data, how to set up an enterprise data office, but on a technical layer also how to tackle issues like data quality or master data management eventually. So everything related to data will gladly help you and partner at your level to find a strategy and get you from A to B. To do this, we have access and certification across a wide range of technology. I don't want to use the word, but it's a bit we're technology agnostic, for whatever that means, which is that we don't have any preference. So we're really flexible to align and bring in the resilience and the expertise to align on the stack of technology that you're deploying across the different levels. Be from a governance perspective, from physical data management up to drivers of the digital transformation. We work with a number of customers and partners and bring the right level of experience to you. Last but not least, to give you an overview, as GDPR hits everyone, if I may say, so are our customers. So we have a wide range from a group perspective, but also locally of sector experience that we could bring and fuel the GDPR experience with you, be it from banking and insurance or life sciences over industry and manufacturing, or the more digital media and telecom industries up to public sector or the services industry. So we come with a wide sector experience and could basically fuel your experience with has-been experiences and expertise from across those sectors. But enough about MICROPOLE. I think it gave you a glance of who we are and how we approach those things. I think I would like to leave the floor to the audience and come up with some interesting questions which we might have. So let me see. Yeah, this numeracy. Yeah, here's an interesting question that we received. Asking is the starter pack also interesting for companies only active in the B2B space, which are operating only nationally or domestically? It's an interesting question. So, Christoph, what do you think?
Yes, indeed, good question, and we see a lot of companies struggling with that and thinking that they are not impacted as a B2B company. Basically, any organization that stores information about EU citizens or people traveling through the EU are impacted. So even any B2B company will hold information such as information on prospects, customers, and employees. So basically, any organization that stores personal data is impacted. So yes, to answer the question, even B2B companies who are just operating nationally are indeed impacted by the GDPR.
Okay, thanks for that. I see another question coming in. Okay, what does it say? Yeah, if I order the starter pack, does that mean that the company will be automatically, GDPR compliant?
Good question indeed. Being GDPR compliant is let's say something that is very comprehensive and very inclusive, and it impacts pretty much all aspects of your business. As Philippe already mentioned in the introduction, what we try to do with the starter pack is get people on the way to becoming compliant. We give you a set of tools, we share our expertise to get you on your road towards compliance. So we believe that with this starter pack, you do cover, let's say, the minimum requirements towards becoming GDPR compliant, but obviously it is your responsibility as an organization to really become compliant. We are obviously there to advise you and guide you through your entire process, but in the end, let's be clear, we are there to get you kick-started, but really taking the journey is something we need to do together, and that's where we need to get, hopefully before May 25th. And this brings me to the next question, which is something we hear often a lot as well. Philippe, the question is, if I do nothing, what will happen after May 25th?
That's an interesting question indeed. I'm tempted to say dare me and see what happens. Now, more seriously, I think we should consider the question with a certain degree of realism and go back to the philosophy of what the GDPR is inclined to do. I think it's not a matter of ticking the box and be compliant. Likelihood of, if you see, as I said at the beginning, we see the level of maturity and the number of companies and customers we talk to that still haven't started GDPR or still trying to figure out where to start. So the expectations that everybody will be compliant and up and running by May, it's utopia. So I really don't believe in that. But on the other hand, I think what is important is to lay the cornerstone and the foundation to take that step towards compliance. But then again, not for the sake of compliancy, but for your own sake. As you look at it from a certain distance, the GDPR will touch about, general rules of data engagement across the company. It's more a matter of housekeeping and data hygiene, if I may so, a code of conduct that you opt to run against your customers and your suppliers and your employees that will basically, take it with a positive eye to say, yeah, this is a trustworthy customer or partner or employer or whatever. So I really feel comfortable. I really want to engage with this party, and he takes, my data seriously. So this is just one of the philosophies in which GDPR has been done. So being compliant by May 25th, what will happen? I'm tempted to say not a lot from a regulatory perspective in terms of, there is still, an oversight duty to be put in place. But if you look at it from a customer perspective, you need to understand that you expose yourself to a risk starting from May 25th. And then the question to yourself is, am I willing, am I prepared to run that reputation risk, or a customer basically, falling into me because I haven't taken care as I should have about his data and privacy protection. So that's a way of looking at the GDPR as well.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that answer, Philip. So I think we're running about out of time. So here are our contact details, both from myself and Philip. I see we have some other questions that we didn't consider yet. We will be sure to contact you individually to answer those questions. And obviously, you can always contact us on the information you see on screen now, should you have any further questions, or if you are interested in ordering the starter pack. So that's it for us here today at MICROPOLE'S. So we thank you very much for joining us online, and we hope to be hearing from you guys in the future. So thanks, and till next time.
Have a pleasant day. Bye.
Bye.